Aloha. Now for these, we don't really necessarily need to be in tune because we're not really playing anything out that needs to be out there, like major chords, patterns. But what we are going to be doing is talking about getting rid of this fifth string in our mind and then utilizing just your low string. Sorry, it's a physical burden. I'm going to look for a four string this week, or maybe borrow one from the store if they allow me, but you know, I don't want to overdo it. But long story short is what we're going to be doing. You looked great. I can tell you've been practicing because that first finger's gotten a lot stronger. Make sure that you're not holding your thumb up on top here. I think it would be better for it to float. And the idea of that dropping down onto the string, I can see that that's taken hold. I watched you do that. It sounds really great. Keep working on it. And the one thing that I could put into perspective is try doing everything a little bit slower. And when you do it, maybe try with a metronome or a click track. I would say about 40 to 50 beats per minute. If you're doing like 60 beats, which is okay, it's half of what normal rock and roll is. But if you're doing 120, that's just a little too fast. Do 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 do. That's what I do now, and I've been doing this for 30 years. So I would say 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3 4. When you go through the whole process, you get up to the end, as we said, and then you do it again. So maybe do whole notes the first time, and the second time through, 1 2 1 2. Do these half notes, half notes, half note, half note, half note, half note. I like how your fingers are staying near the fretboard now, and they're not pointing all the way off. That's wonderful. That means that the spider exercises are working, and it should be kind of tough after 5 minutes. Going through that progression at 40 beats per minute, you should be able to get it through in 5 minutes at least about 16 times, 17, 18 times. So the fingers should hurt at that point. Today's concept about doing the fuller bar chords, like with the 2 C's, that stems out of having the major do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's just basically a concept that comes out of knowing where a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step is. If I was gonna do it in the key of G, this open G note, the highest string on the bass, I would have an open G. It would go to the 2nd fret because G to the 1st fret would be a half step. So I want a whole step to begin with. G, G sharp, and then I'm gonna go up to the G, not G sharp, G, A, B. So that's 2 whole steps. G to A is a whole step, A to B is a whole step. Now B to C is a half step. C to D, whole step, D to E, whole step, E to F, whole step, and then F to G, whole step. So no matter where you do that on this bass, it's gonna do the same thing. Pick a random note. Cool. Whole step, half step. Whole step, whole step, half step. Ta-da! It always works. And that's in a linear motion on 1 string. The concept is you want to be able to do that going up the string so you're not jumping around. The way we get to that is by going super slow, doing these half-step diatonics. So when our fingers have to make these jumps, they're not as weird. You know that that middle finger that's not being, or no, that 3rd finger that's not being utilized is like now a dead finger. It's a placeholder. You don't want to be jumping around to go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can, but why? Why not do a C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C? So there are 3 different patterns. I know that might have been whoop. However, it is actually very interesting. I only really use one of these patterns because it is all-encompassing for everything, and that's the 3rd pattern that I use with my 1st finger. However, I'm going to show you all 3 because it's cool to have those open notes. A lot of like happens on that opener first string anyways, to get that minor 3rd to the major 3rd blended. It's kind of a blues Dorian beboppy kind of thing. We'll explain that later. But the takeaway from what we did today that was going to be good for you to check out this week is keep going with those spider exercises, making sure you're in the middle. Go a little slower so you get more context out of it, more fulfillment, more longer durations of those notes so you can actually internalize it and feel it. When you're doing this, make sure you're looking in a mirror rather than looking in your own thing right here. And then if you have a strap, bring it next week. I have a pair of strap lock tuners, which means we'll put it in the nut and this won't come off. So when you put on the strap, your bass won't have a tendency to flop down. It'll just be on here. And these stupid things won't pop off. These things actually keep it on there, like squish it together and make it easy. So you have to push a button. I've actually never taken it off since I put it on. The hell with it, I'm not doing it. It does come off, but It'll help you in the long run. Anyway, it was really great seeing you, and I'm going to leave you on this. The 3 different patterns. Try these this week, and we're going to recap them next week. Cool. C. Now remember, this 5th string's not here, so G string. C, we're going to go to the open D, so C on the 3rd fret, open D, no fingering. 1st finger on the 2nd fret for the E, half step to the F, open G, our last string open, and then we're going to play the A at the 2nd fret, skip the 3rd fret, go to the 4th fret with our 3rd finger, and then do a half step resolve with our pinky for that note. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Also, it's imperative to go backwards. Don't have to, but it's one of the things we'll discuss next week. Forward and backwards are the same, but they feel different in the brain and in the fingers. Cool. So that 1st fingering had our 3rd finger starting it. Well, now if we start with our 2nd finger, we omit the 1st string, not 1st string, 1st fret, and the open frets. Meaning we're going to have 3rd fret, 5th fret with our pinky, 2nd fret with our pointer finger. Our half step is still a half step, so our C to a D, whole step, D to an E, whole step. Even though it's going backwards, it's still an open E, open D to an E, which is a D at the 5th fret now to the 2nd fret. C, D, E, half step to the F, whole step to the G, whole step to the A, whole step to the B, and then the C. Notice how the same notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, but we excluded the open string and the 1st fret. The next one is not going to be with our 3rd finger or our 2nd finger, rather our 1st finger. It's going to go from the 1st fret to the, 3rd fret, C, to the D on the 5th fret, to the E on the 7th fret, to the F on the 4th fret, to the G on the 5th fret, to the A on the 6th fret. Here's the caveat. 4th fret for the B, and then a half step to the C. Once again, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Between all these, they incorporate what you're going to do everywhere. Doesn't have to start on the 3rd fret on the C. It could start on the 6th fret on the D sharp or the E flat. And the notes that you would play, do, 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 do. They're always going to be the same because that's what the fingers are programmed to learn. That's why we practice these as boring, 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 super boring, this note, boring, boring, boring. You do these scales over and over again. And then we try 2-note variations like C, C, D, D, C, C, D, D. And it actually becomes music. Boom, 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 boom. If we add a 5th in there, we'd have boom, 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 boom. And you see where I'm going with this. The more additions you make, the more it becomes musical. But we start off very slow. Cool. C major, no sharps, no flats. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Our 8th note is actually our 1 note. Duh. But what I'd like to hint on here is that whole Roman numeral thing that we did. When we're in the key of C, C is the 1. It's the root. It's a major. When we go to our next note, D, that D becomes a minor. Because if we played C major, D major, E major, F major, G major, it's just boring. Super boring. That's why we have inflection to give feeling. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and then it resolves back to C. So when we go through this, the only one that you're really going to need to know is 1, 4, and 5 are majors, and then 2, 3, and 6 are minors, and then the 7th is a diminished. This all will tie together when we're talking about how to put our 3rd, our mediant, into these chords. We kind of briefly went over it, but C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step, and it just so turns out in the key of C, do, re, mi, that 3rd is our major 3rd. When we flatten it, it becomes a minor 3rd. And we'll talk about how to feel that and how to play it in different places. I'm super glad you showed up today. I'm really excited that you've been practicing. I can tell. And then I'll see you next week. Aloha.